This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of the Motor City Sports Rant is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners of this podcast can save 30% off the first year of an annual subscription by going and visiting theathletic.com/DSP. That's theathletic.com/DSP. Become a subscriber. All the hosts here on the network, we read The Athletic because they got great in-depth features. They got writers covering all major Detroit sports. Again, become a subscriber and save 30% off. theathletic.com/DSP.
Detroit is the greatest!
Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Darren McCarty comes back to Neiman in front of him. McCarty draws. McCarty in. McCarty scores! A magnificent goal! Darren McCarty!
Stafford takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Motor City Sports Rant. Oh, my goodness. If you're a fan of Michigan, I'm sorry. What you sat and waited for 9 months must have been disappointing. This week, I got Vito in studio. He's here to help me break down what happened versus Notre Dame on the road. We have a guest this week. Jack Wangler is going to be here, and he's going to break down as well, try to help give us some insight regarding what happened in Notre Dame, in South Bend. Oh, my goodness. You know, my quick thought on it, Vito, really interesting in that a lot of the concerns that people had regarding Michigan football showed itself again on Saturday night. Everybody sat and waited 9 months. What was going to happen? The big debut of Shea Patterson. What was going to occur in this contest? And what people saw was highly agitating, highly disappointing. In the end, the result probably did not offend people or anger people as much as the way that product looked on the football field. Michigan did not look prepared early on. That vaunted defense got torched. Big play after big play. Huge mistakes when one of your highly touted defenders gets ejected from the contest. You did not seem ready to play. And then people started digging into the play calling, what they saw on the football field. Jim Harbaugh walked away really with a lot of criticism as a result of that contest. Really interesting in the way that contest shook out.
A lot of detractors, even more now for Jim Harbaugh, who can't win a big game. 1-5 against MSU Ohio State, 3-6 overall against rival Big Ten East foes in Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State. 0-1 now in the big rivalry matchup with Notre Dame. Not good for Harbaugh.
What was your takeaway? What were you thinking? Did you get a chance to watch that contest start to finish? I know Adam had a chance to go out to South Bend, tailgate. He shared his stories on WDFN 1130 on Labor Day. It was interesting. You know, basically he said that there was a couple of people that ribbed him and things like that, but all in all he said, and his biggest takeaway was, if you've never been to South Bend, you got to go and have a good time enjoying a contest, tailgating for a Notre Dame contest. But as you were watching that, set the scene, how did you watch it? What were you thinking early on as Notre Dame jumped out, first couple possessions, 2 touchdowns?
It was a tale of two halves. Michigan, only 90 yards of offense in the first half, 10 points overall. 7 of them were scored on what? A 99-yard kickoff return for touchdown from Ambry Thomas of Detroit King, a guy that I've interviewed before, cornerback for Detroit King, now for U of M. Good cornerback, good player, special teams return artist. Now, I mean, look at what he did on Saturday night in ND. So that was impressive, but the rest of the offense was stinko. Shea Patterson wasn't great in his debut. Now, they rebounded the second half for 217 yards of offense and limited Notre Dame to 3 points in the second half. But it was far too late for Michigan. And I watched the game all game long at my buddy Brennan Barcume's house. It was a tailgate party or watch party for the Michigan ND game. I got there around 6 o'clock. Apparently it was too late for my buddy Nick Schmiegel. He got on me for being a little bit late because the party had started at 5 o'clock. Well, I thought the party had started when I walked in at 6 o'clock, about an hour too late, apparently. Well, once again, according to Nick. Anyways, there, at Barcume's house, that is Brennan Barcume, the guy that I recorded my Michigan Notre Dame countdown to, kickoff podcast with last week, the special edition with Barcume and Brennan Quigley, 2 Brendans, those 2 guys aficionados on Michigan and Notre Dame respectively. And they were both there. Quigley, not for the whole entire time as he left before the game had kicked off because he wanted to watch it with his Notre Dame cronies. But Barcume, Nick Schmiegel, a few other buddies were there drinking alcoholic beverages, eating wings, great wings that I think Barcume had made for us. So it was a great watch party with this family, our friends, and the first half was miserable to watch, so trust me. We had to move around, change positions because we're a little bit superstitious. I put on my Valiant V hat, Maize and Blue Valiant hat in the second half to try to switch things up and maybe bring some good luck for Michigan, and there was, it looked like, a little bit. Just not enough because it was far too late when Michigan finally turned it on, and Shea Patterson had that nice drive in the fourth quarter, but it was too late at that point for Michigan to overcome its horrible first half, Doc.
So, Vito, what happened? Why did Michigan look like that? Why did Michigan not look like a team that was ready to play, not ready to go in and attack Notre Dame? It seemed like Notre Dame had all the fire, all the juice early on. What were the biggest things that you saw were contributing to the fact that Michigan did not walk away from South Bend with the victory?
I think Brandon Wimbush was better than expected, too. He could throw it with more accuracy than people thought he would be able to.
Were you surprised that at this point in time that Michigan's defense still can't really adjust to a mobile quarterback? I mean, basically across all of the NCAA, you would think that you would see, mobile quarterbacks that can scramble and things like that. It seems like Don Brown's defense wasn't able to adjust. And, I understand that you got to have a QB spy to stop a quarterback like Wimbush. But, that play, 3rd and 18, he was just able to scurry down the field. I had never seen, and I tweeted out, a 3rd and 18 looks so easy.
Yeah.
And it's really disappointing in that you would think a Don Brown defense, while it is aggressive, should kind of know when to, scale it back a little bit and, make some plays at the right time. It just seemed like they were not able to find consistent answers to Wimbush and how to handle a mobile quarterback.
And like you said, you had 9 months to study Wimbush and what he did best, which is being a mobile dual-threat quarterback that could roll outside and make throws, make plays with his legs. And you didn't know how to stop him? Really? You made him look like a superstar out there. He should not have looked like a Heisman candidate. He looked like a Heisman candidate after that game, Doc, at least in the first half. In the second half, Michigan's defense did adjust finally, so they made adjustments, the necessary ones. But it was too late. Why weren't you ready to start off the game? Right?
Unbelievable. The mistakes is what really has frustrated a lot of people. Chase Winovich taking a terrible penalty to extend drives for Notre Dame. You had a player for Michigan early in the game, a targeting penalty to get ejected.
Josh Metellus for targeting, get ejected. That wasn't good either for Michigan's D to start off the game.
Exactly, and people were just wondering, wow, at this point in time, it lends to questions regarding what Jim Harbaugh can actually do with Michigan. Now, some people are saying, look, it's an overreaction to react that strongly to a loss. Some people say, look, the season's not over. You lost to a ranked team that was higher than you going into the game. You still have the ability to go forward and meet all your goals, win the Big Ten, and get to Indy. Now, winning the national title, that's going to be really hard. I do see another loss this season. But at this point in time, what's your level of faith with Jim Harbaugh? And like I asked a radio host on 97.1 The Ticket, Dennis Fithian, how do you feel about Michigan football right now, Vito?
I don't trust Harbaugh to win the big game. And I think the trust factor in Harbaugh has gone down immensely.
Wow.
Since that game won, since the Notre Dame loss, I think it's gone down immensely. I think already people were turning their backs on Harbaugh, but people really are turning their backs on him now because he couldn't beat Notre Dame. I know it was on the road, first game of the season, but you look not ready, not prepared for that game to start off the game. That wasn't a good look for Harbaugh and his coaching staff, and Don Brown has to come under fire as well. Great defensive coordinator. Michigan's had a vaunted defense in the past, but it didn't look vaunted. Did not look vaunted enough. It was not stout in the first half. Chase Winovich making that stupid penalty. Devin Bush turned it on late and was looking great in the second half. But where was he in the first half? Other guys in the first half, where were they, Doc? So for me, the Michigan defense didn't show up in the first half. Shea and the offense didn't look ready. And no offense to our man Karan Higdon, who was on the show earlier with you, a one-on-one podcast, right, Doc? But he didn't look great. He averaged, 3.5 yards per carry? Not nearly good enough. And Chris Evans, who's a guy that can make some catches and make some guys miss in the open field, where was he? He was MIA. I think his face is on a milk carton right now. He had 2 rushes for a yard. Why didn't they use him more in the ground game and maybe even in the passing game to allow Shea maybe to expand his horizons with his passing attack as he was making his debut for Michigan? That could have maybe simplified the offensive attack for Patterson in game number 1 under center for Michigan. And they didn't deploy, once again, Chris Evans nearly enough. Karan wasn't nearly efficient enough running the football. And their receivers don't look that great. And they might really miss Tariq Black more than I even thought going into this season, Doc.
Of course they were going to miss Tariq Black. It's one of those things where after the guest, we'll talk about one of the big concerns that emerged is the offensive line. All the talk about the offensive lineman came out and said, look, we want to change the a narrative of how people view us. We're not soft. We're not weak. Even one of Michigan's own, Braylon Edwards. If you pay attention to this week's Two Bad Hombres podcast, we will go in depth regarding what we thought about Braylon Edwards, how to handle social media, and was he censored in terms of what he said. So stay tuned this Saturday for Two Bad Hombres, as Vito and I will break down how to handle social media, as both Vito and I are social media directors. We handle a lot of accounts online, and it's definitely different being the owner of an entity as opposed to being somebody that's working for an entity, and we'll break that all down. Not this week. We're not going to talk about people's reactions other than our own, but this Saturday and every Saturday, Two Bad Hombres. One of the concerns that has definitely emerged, and now there's a bunch of tape, Vito, teams can just blitz galore and really test the Michigan offensive line. You had Shea Patterson looking like a guy that was, really cornered and was unable at times to get plays off because he was so pressured, caused some turnovers. And, after our guest, I'm going to, obviously ask you, what's your level of concern regarding Michigan training staff? I mean, a lot of guys, even on Notre Dame side.
Oh, you're going to bring up the cramping, right, from Shea.
Cramping in the first game is not something I ever thought I would see in the post-game asking, where the media members were asking, what's it like to cramp in a game? I thought Shea Patterson would be present and available the entire game. And when you're cramping, it's no matter how hot it is, you got to be available. Dylan McCaffrey, though, when he came in, did not look all that bad. He looked like he was running the offense. It looked a little bit more smoother with that quarterback. Will that emerge? Will that be an emerging storyline going forward? What's going to happen with Dylan McCaffrey? Because he looked talented. He looks like a pro-style quarterback. But many people are also saying, too, you have the same quarterback. It looks like Shea Patterson, Wilton Speight, John O'Korn, Dylan McCaffrey.
Oh, come on. Shea's better. Dual threat. They should have used him more as a dual threat, though, and, had him run some, boots to the outside, or like scrambled outside. And
I want to ask you this, Vito. Jim Harbaugh had the ultimate success, was in the biggest game with what kind of quarterback? Colin Kaepernick. Now, this is a quarterback maybe similar to Shea Patterson, but I think, just based on what I saw, I think maybe Colin Kaepernick might be even a little bit more athletic than Shea Patterson. I'm saying here, Michigan likely will get to the level of success in that offense when you have a quarterback similar to what Winbush brings to the table, a guy that can throw the football and can make plays at the level of a Brian Lewerke. Shea Patterson probably can make plays, but can he stick around in games? Will he be allowed to throw the football deep? Because there was just one deep play really to Nico Collins, and then they went away from it. People were highly upset at the play calling, highly upset at the conservative nature of that Michigan offense. Why? Is this what the offense is going to be? Because at this point in time, I think you and I both saw it, and even maybe your friends that you watched it with will say, Michigan's offense is predictable and easy to defend.
It's vanilla, right?
And that's what was really terrible to see, in that's what I said in the preseason. If you followed us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, I took a lot of flack and lost followers for saying that Michigan's biggest weakness is Jim Harbaugh. And I still stick by it. I think that he's not emerged as a guy that has done the job at the level that his pay has afforded him. And I think that he's got to do a much better job, because coaching at this point in time is so highly specialized. I don't see a significant genius on the sideline for the Michigan Wolverines. I don't see it. I see a guy that's basically come in and said, this is my strategy. Did you hear? And I'm sorry to our guest, we'll get to him very shortly. I am livid and frustrated. Did you hear what he said to the press when he got up there Labor Day at noon? He said that, and he used this check the boxes metaphor a lot. He said that when we go and look at a lot of the boxes that tell us if the offensive line has done well, he said, the offensive line's doing well. I was like, did you not watch the game that I saw?
Tell that to Cesar Ruiz and John Runyon getting pushed around, manhandled.
Yes. Now, we're not going to take personal shots like some Michigan alum tend to do, but what I'll say is that Cesar Ruiz, John Runyon, and that entire offensive line has to do a lot better in terms of
against
blocking.
The big boys. You're not going to beat the big boys if you don't block properly for Shane, and then allow him to roll to the outside, right, and make his plays with his legs, you know?
Exactly. And I'm interested to see what you and Jack Wangler will talk about regarding that offense, what he sees as some big concerns, because I was definitely concerned regarding that offensive line. I wouldn't have checked any boxes. What are you talking about checking the boxes?
Yeah, really. And this is Jack Wangler, former Michigan wide receiver, joining us on the Motor City Sports Rant. Jack, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Vito?
Very good. Glad to have you on. Pleasure always talking to you. We don't always get the chance to chat with each other, but I see you at Top Cat Sales, and once again, obviously, I work for your father, John Wangler, a former Michigan great, Rose Bowl winning quarterback in 1981 with the Michigan Wolverines. And anyways, you had a nice stint there, 5 years in Ann Arbor, playing for Michigan, and that's why we have you on this week to break down the Michigan-Notre Dame contest and kind of what went wrong, what went erroneous for Michigan as a whole. And for me, when I look at the game, Jack, just to start off here, it was a tale of two halves, where the first half, Michigan didn't look quite ready, had only 90 yards of offense, 10 points scored. In the second half, 217 yards of offense and limited Notre Dame to 3 points. What would you attribute that tale of two halves to?
I think a lot of it's just second half adjustments. Obviously, Don Brown and his staff do an excellent job of taking whatever happened in the first half, any big plays, any tendencies that they see, and correcting them, and ultimately getting the defensive guys adjusted and fired up again to play in the second half and ultimately come out stronger in the second half. And offense-wise, I think it's a matter of assessing what Notre Dame was throwing at them, what type of blitzes they were doing, the coverages they had, and really making those second half adjustments. I think one of the big things was big plays. Obviously, one of the second play of the big half, Nico Collins had a 52-yard grab. I think one of the things that they probably noticed was maybe Notre Dame was going to sleep on them, thought they were just going to come out running the ball, or maybe try to pick up on that tendency. So, yeah, I think exploiting the opportunities when they're given to them.
Ambry Thomas had a 99-yard kickoff return for touchdown. How special of an offensive weapon could he potentially be, at least in the special teams end of things?
Yeah, I've seen Ambry grow, especially over the last year. He's an awesome kid, great kid, always looking to learn, always looking to improve his game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him on offense or even more so on special teams, whether that's working in or rotating with Donovan at punt returner, and then keeping his duties as kick returner well, because he's proven he's a viable threat and impactful player on the team when it comes to the special teams. So don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see more of Ambry on special teams in a returner facet, and then also on offense, sprinkling him in and making packages for him. I wouldn't be surprised, just because you don't want to have – obviously, David and Levert are doing an awesome job at corner, doing their part, but having Ambry in the wings is great too at corner. But when you have a guy that does so much for the team and can be so versatile, you really want to make sure to get him on the field some way, somehow. Kind of reminds me of Michigan State's Tony Lippett. I think he was both ways at some points in his career, because he was just that much of a weapon. So, yeah, I mean, you want to get your best players on the field at some point, some way, somehow.
Now, a lot of people are critical of Michigan's defense to start the game, as well as their response to a running quarterback. What was Wimbush able to do so effectively against that Michigan defense, and why do you think they struggled so much trying to contain a running quarterback, especially in this day and age when there are a lot more athletic quarterbacks across the entire NCAA?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame did a great job blocking up front. I think our defense is very aggressive, and maybe that's to a fault sometimes. Maybe that's how I think a lot of the runs that I noticed, especially in the first half, were just collapsing pockets, and he was able to run up the middle or run. It wasn't really more so running on the edges. It felt more so up the middle when plays were breaking down after a couple seconds. So I think there were opportunities for Michigan to take down Wimbush in the backfield, but it's a matter of just wrapping up and tackling, which I know they'll get that corrected. I know they'll look over that in film and get that corrected. So, I mean, yeah, those are first-game mistakes, but it's a good thing these mistakes kind of happen early in the season rather than later, and not and just, yeah, it'll give us the opportunity to correct those.
And, Jack, I think Wimbush has great escapability. And I think Shea Patterson really does as well, the junior quarterback transfer from Ole Miss. Went 20 of 30 through the air for 227 passing yards, 0 TDs, 1 INT, and his debut under center for Michigan. How would you evaluate his play against Notre Dame this past Saturday?
To me, I think it was a solid start, especially for Shea. I met him when he was coming in. He seems like a great guy, really a team guy, and also wants to win and lead by example. So to come into Notre Dame first game, you're transferring. I mean, you really don't have that much time to gel in terms of like your O-line and receivers. You've been there for 8 or 9 months. So, I mean, yeah, that seems like a lot of time, but I mean, that type of chemistry, it may take years to build. And for him to come in there and come in and lead the way he did, really was unfazed. Seemed that he's been in the big stage before. That's the kind of guy that Michigan needs under center. And so I was satisfied with obviously the outcome was what it was, but I was pleased to see that we had someone under center that was calm and collected and really showing that he wants to win the big ones. But obviously all quarterbacks and all teams do, but it really was really evident that Shea was the guy that was very comfortable under center.
And one of the major gripes that has been clearly expressed about the Michigan offensive attack against Notre Dame Saturday and last season as well has been the play of the O-line. And we could talk about that all day long, but really I want to dive into another gripe that I have with the Michigan offensive attack personally, and that is the ground game and not implementing and utilizing Chris Evans nearly enough, in my opinion. Only 2 rushes for 1 yard. What do you think Michigan has to do to get him more involved moving forward in that offensive attack? And how important do you think it is to feature him more on the ground, moving forward as well?
Right. I think Karan and Chris are complement each other. Karan's more downhill. Chris is more finesse. So if there was a way, there are ways to implement 2 back sets where you have both of them in the backfield. It kind of keeps the defense on their toes. You don't know if Chris moves out of the backfield, if Karan moves out of the backfield, who's getting the ball. I think Chris is able to do a lot of things outside of the tackle box once you put him in space and get him the ball, whether it's like a 5-yard option route or something coming out of the backfield. Chris has proven that he can make a guy miss and take it a long way. Kind of reminds me of Ohio State last year when he got the ball in space and was able to make guys move. Really wasn't necessarily running between linemen, but it was more so out in space. So I was watching the Florida State game last night. They had a freshman running back that kind of similar, was able to make plays in space and do those sorts of things, catching the ball out of the backfield. So I agree with you. I wish I would have seen Chris more. But you know what? I trust the coaches to implement a game plan and do things the right way moving forward and correct the mistakes that they made. That's just the way that it operates up there.
How do you think Michigan bounces back Saturday against Western Michigan?
I think for me, it's establishing and continuing to work on your identity. Obviously, Rome wasn't built in a day. I don't think Michigan's season's done after one game at Notre Dame against a very stout defense and Wimbush in his offense. So I think it's staying true to the course of what they've been trying to develop and work on. Obviously, there's a lot more differences in quarterback play and offensive line. There's different personnel and people in the game this year as opposed to last year. So they're obviously still making changes, and there's going to be growing pains. But ultimately, I think it's working on that identity. They have a structure they can really tinker with who they want out there, the types of personnel, the things they want to do over this next stretch. They've got Western, SMU, Maryland, Nebraska. So this could be a good opportunity, especially these next 2 games, to really hone in on what things are effective and to really just get that line to continue to gel and work together. Because obviously every year when you have departures and guys going to the NFL, you're going to have holes that you're going to fill. I mean, you lost Mason Cole and Pat Kugler to graduation and NFL last year, so you are breaking in new starters this year. So this will give them a chance to really continue to work on picking up blocks, picking up stunts and twists and whatever comes the defensive line's bringing at the offensive line. So it'll give them a chance to really improve in that facet.
One player that caught a lot of people's attention when he got in there was quarterback Dylan McCaffrey. And some people have said, okay, you know what? He looked decent. Maybe he is going to be the backup. A lot of people obviously have eyes on Shea Patterson. But what did Dylan McCaffrey bring to the table? What did you see in terms of his first performance, getting in some action versus Notre Dame?
I'm very proud of Dylan. I've seen him grow over the last year. He's a very athletic, very heady player. I talked to him after the game. I told him how proud I was of him. Just seeing his development, always someone that wants to learn and improve his game. Doesn't really matter who he's going against. I mean, last year he went against first-team defense, and he'd rip them apart, get Don Brown frustrated just by his athletic ability. So I think the raw talent has always been there, but for him to go out there and complete his first pass and make the plays that he did as if he didn't skip a beat was very impressive to me, and should be a testament to his demeanor and his own mental preparation for this game. To be thrown in there as a redshirt freshman at Notre Dame in the heat of a game and to play the way he did, I was very impressed and very happy with that. So I think quarterback play is growing. There's a lot of young talent there that's very promising. So for him to continue to develop, and especially over these next games, if there are opportunities for him to play, and then getting BP in there as well too. So I think all the quarterbacks are very capable, and that was shown and evident on Saturday night.
Dylan has some game, Shea has some game, and Jack Wangler has some game. Jack, with that, great stuff from you, man, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much, Vito. Take care.
Thank you. You too. I'll talk to you.
All right.
Interesting stuff there from Jack. I think that he's got an opportunity to really, have some access regarding Michigan because his dad is, like you said, former Michigan quarterback, John Wangler. So good stuff there, Vito. Good get, and I enjoyed the conversation. He's kind of connected to the Michigan program, and similar to what everybody saw, he is, really looking at some of the deficits, some things that they can also get better at as well. And I definitely think that Michigan will rebound versus SMU, obviously, and then the home opener will be this weekend versus Western Michigan. So the next two games, Western Michigan, SMU, I think will be a little bit easier for Michigan. But when that Big Ten season starts, Vito, Michigan has to just play a lot better. And like we've said, and the biggest thing that's made everybody angry is Michigan did not look ready. They didn't look like they were coming in to play. They didn't look like they were coming in to win the game. It looked like they came to execute similar things that they have in the past. And Notre Dame just took advantage and executed a lot better in a lot of different fronts in that contest.
Notre Dame looked better coached and outcoached and outperformed Michigan. Now, once again, the fourth quarter, Michigan looked better. Dylan McCaffrey looked nice, too, in that series. Looked effective, looked sharp. And, Jack was saying he's talked to Dylan. I believe he said after that game on Saturday night, and really Dylan killed it. So Jack was proud of Dylan, happy with his performance, and maybe there's a quarterback controversy, at least in the future, brewing in Ann Arbor. Not right now, but if Shea struggles against these, low-tier opponents in Western Michigan and SMU in back-to-back weeks, maybe then there is a controversy at quarterback, and maybe Dylan McCaffrey is given the chance to step up and become that starting quarterback in Ann Arbor. And not many people expected that to be the case, but maybe it does become the case. But once again, okay, that's like a pipe dream right now. It's only the case if Shea struggles the next 2 weeks, which really I don't see that happening. And you can see this offense gelling, I think, as time goes on this season. And I think Michigan will be ready for its big games as the season does go along because of that factor. Doc.
Biggest concern that you saw in that contest? Was it the defense? Was it the fact they couldn't stop Winbush? Was it the mistakes, the penalties, leaders making huge errors at key times? Was it the offensive line? Was it the play calling? What was the biggest reason that Michigan struggled versus Notre Dame in your eyes?
Play calling, I think, really sticks out to me. It was too conservative. And I would say roll out Shea Patterson. Use his legs. He can run and throw on the run. Use him in that way. And then you feature his best abilities and talents that way. So I think they really overthought things, which Jim Harbaugh has done before, including last year against Michigan State, right? When they lost that game with the torrential downpour at Michigan Stadium and they lost a close game they shouldn't have lost to Michigan State. So I think really it was overanalyzing, overthinking the offensive game plan, and they didn't utilize Shea Patterson in the best way possible because of that. And I think they will, though, adjust as the season does go along. And once again, I think Shea will gel with this offensive attack, and I think the ground game will grow into something and become better. And really, for me, then, it just becomes about the O-line. To focus on one thing, it becomes about the O-line and how that improves. Does it improve enough? We will see as the season does progress here. Doc.
A couple more thoughts before we get out of here. You've been listening to the Motor City Sports Rant. Comes out every single Tuesday on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. By the end of the season and going into next year, will we be talking about the job status and security of current head coach Jim Harbaugh?
I think if he doesn't win 9 games, you will start talking about his job going into next year. He will be safe. He will have a job for a 5th year in Ann Arbor as a head coach. But I think if he only wins 8 games, he's in trouble for next year. And then next year, the ultimatum is for him, the onus is on him to win 10 games at least. If he only wins 8 this year, he has to win 10 next year to keep his job maybe.
The games on the schedule that most concern you going forward, is it Wisconsin, Michigan State, Ohio State? Which games make you go, oh boy, this could be a long season? Because a lot of people right now, if you ask them, will probably have Michigan losing 3 to 4 games this year.
I have 3 losses now because I thought 2, but with the loss of Notre Dame, 3 now, and I think Wisconsin with their big line, that scares me because of the lack of a great O-line. Now, Wisconsin is more about their O-line, but still that scares me playing against Wisconsin. I think a really good Wisconsin squad and against a really good Ohio State squad with more talent, I believe, on both sides of the ball than Michigan overall-wise. Those 2 teams fear me the most for Michigan moving forward, and that's why I think Michigan ends up with 3 losses now. I thought 2 going into the season, but I thought they beat Notre Dame on Saturday. They didn't beat Notre Dame, obviously. And now I think U of M ends up with 3 losses this campaign, which is disappointing, I think, for Jim Harbaugh.
Definitely disappointing year 4. Now, how patient are you? What percentage patience do you have with Michigan year 4? Because, some quality coaches like Bo Schembechler, Lloyd Carr lost to some games, but when everyone says the last 18 games, 9-9, you haven't won a game on the road versus a quality team in 17 games, a lot of stats are looking crooked. What percentage patience do you have with Jim Harbaugh?
Well, it's over 50% on a scale of big Vito's over under. It's over 50%, but it's not 75%.
All right.
I'll tell you that much. I'm not as confident or as comfortable in him as I once was.
Yeah, and then the talk might have to be, who's next?
Les Miles. I've said it before. I know. I got his number.
Do you?
I'll call him up and ask him, you want the job?
Oh, maybe we'll
Love to
talk
get him
about
on the phone line, maybe. Well, if Harbaugh gets fired, which he's not going to after this season.
Just some things
But-
that I've heard is that Les Miles is a bad hombre himself.
Yes.
There's
Well,
something-
and he's funny. He's a character, man. He's
Okay.
doing Dos Equis ads now. Did you see that? Him and Steve Spurrier are doing Dos Equis ads. He doesn't even need coaching. He can make money, loads of money off of these ads, man.
All right, Vito, great time. I thank you for filling in for Jason talking Michigan football. Thanks to Jack Wangler. Great stuff there. Hope to talk to him again. Maybe he can visit when he's in town. Good stuff there. Michigan has to do a much better job. And next week, definitely tune in on Tuesday as I will recap my experience being media at the Big House. Now, it might be my only appearance because if there's a question that might need to be asked, maybe the DOC might ask it. And I'm not going to ask it similar to the guy that was the Spartan guy that said, tell me the reason why the Michigan fans should support you, Jim Harbaugh. But look, I think some questions need to be asked, some serious questions regarding...
Serious questions that you have in mind.
I have some
You'll
serious
be all
questions.
over it, Doc.
No, I'm going to sit back and some people have told me, just sit back and observe, learn. And I've documented, transcripted some questions. But in the end, I roughly, as a sports guy, know what to ask. I know what I want to ask, but we'll see how the game progresses. We'll see how everything goes. And stay tuned here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. The best journalists, the best podcasters, and, a great podcast network to share information as we've now been afforded the opportunity to be credentialed media, going all over town, covering sports all over college, professional. It's great times, man.
Always great times here on the DSP Network. Thank you much. Thanks for allowing me to be on this podcast this week. Subbing in for Jason Jarvie was a pleasure of mine, and I will see you guys and talk to you guys again next week. Adios.
Okay, nice idiot. F you. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.